Hi, this is Steve Wraith, and thanks for listening to the Steve Wraith interviews. This interview was recorded during 2020's lockdown period and was part of a special series.
Yes, we've got an hour of questions and chat anyway, just about the takeover. I've got to be honest, mate. I think just looking at the stuff today online, which I'm sure you have, I started off with NUFC.com, which I think we all know NUFC.com and Biff. I tend to sit on the fence a lot. But I think today's assessment of it, and if people haven't read it, I would suggest they do, is pretty good. And essentially what they've said, obviously they came out quite optimistic at the start of the week. And I think they've probably had a few inboxes from people saying what's going on. Knowing what my inbox has been like and what your inbox has been like, I can imagine that it's been a bit crazy. But they've done a very good job of telling everybody exactly what is going on. So I'll read it to people. I'll read it to everybody if they haven't already read it. But it's a quick digest of where we're actually at. It's been done, as they say, in usual good faith but best endeavours basis. So anyway, it says, optimism last weekend that the Premier League checks were set to be passed was quickly dampened when documentation was received by the Premier League and simultaneously circulated in media outlets. That detailed an apparent breach of the Premier League checks by Staveley & Co. in regards to the BOutQ streaming service. With the Premier League obligated to investigate a claimed breach of that rule, that prospective club owners must not provide false, misleading or inaccurate information. Press claims of no red flags in the process until that point were based on the fact that none of the parties named on the takeover documentation had failed any of the individual financial or criminal checks. The situation is complicated not only by the diversion of Project Restart and the associated financial implications on Premier League clubs, but also attempts to make the takeover a parliamentary issue. With regards to the latter, mentions of referral to the Digital Media and Sport Committee in some quarters appear to be hopeful rather than inevitable, and the final decision over the takeover still rests with the Premier League at this time. That situation does also weaken the argument in some quarters that there's political pressure to placate the Saudis and approve the takeover due to UK trade deals, etc., although that's the subject of some strongly contrasting views. What does all of that mean? No early resolution one way or the other, with every chance of a legal challenge were the Premier League to reject the takeover bid. Whether approval of the deal could also trigger legal action is yet another twist that could not be ruled out. So, I mean, I think that was pretty good. And I felt that was a good start of the day, really, because it in layman's terms, and that's what we need, it explains to everybody what the situation is. However, they're the same as us. They're only guessing where we're at. And, you know, there's nothing to say that we won't get an announcement sooner rather than later. The interesting thing I found about that was, though, that they're talking about legal action at the end. That's their assumption. I don't think we're going to go down that route. I think that Amanda Staveley and Co. A year ago, when they decided that they were going to buy Newcastle United, you know, set out in the right manner about it. They've set their cards and they've set their stalls out. They've done it. They've done their due diligence. They've done everything by the book. They've planned. And it's like we're saying in the game of boxing. You know, if you fail to prepare, you prepare to fail. And I don't think Amanda Staveley and Co have done that. I think they're on the money, and I think they've accounted for every single potential, you know, pothole that they can see. And the potholes that we're seeing are obvious ones. What do you think, Neil?
Well, I think firstly that's as ever from Biff, something very considered.
Yeah,
they very rarely stick their neck out on the line with good reason. That's how they are very good at doing what they do. Yeah, and that's far. With regards, one thing I would say regarding legal action, I know somebody that I've done a lot of work with over the last 6 months in particular. He said early on that Mike Ashley has had a legal team prepped to go at the Premier League if it falls through, which is interesting. There's certainly been something of that has happened on one side or the other. Whether it's both sides, I would be guessing too. But his knowledge of Mike Ashley and how Mike Ashley works would lead me to believe that sounds significant to me. the thing that's come out for me over the last few days is how many stories have been broken in the morning and then been walked back within 48 hours.
Yeah.
Or even in under 6 hours in one case by the same newspaper.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why I keep saying to people, it's noise.
Yeah.
And it's hopeful noise, and there's agenda in there. I mean, the MP who's talking about the Parliamentary Select Committee has connections to the West Ham board, has connections to Qatar.
Yeah.
And every time you dig into these a little bit, you start to see more agenda somewhere. And either it's because somebody's frightened they're going to lose out on some money, or that somebody's trying to curry favour with somebody on one side or other of the whole geopolitical divide out here. It's quite fascinating seeing how it's all sort of unwinding and unravelling. And as fans, it's really difficult to keep positive. I get it. We've got, I think we mentioned when we spoke the other day, we've had 13 years of negative mindset under Mike Ashley. I'm not surprised the fan base gets twitchy and negative about it because it's super hard. There's stuff that was questioned to me by, again, 2 or 3 individuals early on that had I made a big song and dance about it, I'm sure I could have sent Twitter into meltdown. And it's just, there's just no... There's no need for it.
I've heard of Twitter.
Oh, I know. This Twitter thing. Oh man.
Talking of Twitter, and this is obviously going to be where, you know, most of the fans find out about the news once the takeover goes through. Paul Smith's made a bit of a wave today. What do you know about him? Do you know anything about him? It's a name that's new to me. Obviously, looking into him a little bit, a lot of people seem to say that he was the one who broke the Leicester takeover story.
Yes.
He seems to be the latest journalist who's putting his reputation on the line by more or less saying it's done and it'll be announced very shortly.
He works in and around takeovers as well. He's not just a journalist. He's somebody who does work in and around takeovers as well. Mm-hmm. And so he's definitely credible. Yeah. And you're right. He's probably stuck his neck on the line with that. He's pretty much gone. That's it, you know.
Yeah.
So it's one of the more positive stories that comes out, but inevitably a lot of people are looking at it and getting a little bit cautious of it because of, you know, because you don't get too many positive stories at the minute.
No, you don't, and that's been the most difficult thing. And I mean, you know, I've you know, in the first 6 weeks, I did try to answer everyone's questions and try to be the positive voice, and you've done exactly the same. And it can be quite difficult, you know, because people don't appreciate how many inboxes you actually get. You know, coming off Twitter has been a massive plus for me this week. I've managed to get so much more done. I haven't been as negative within myself, but I still have had inboxes on Insta, and that's not having to go to anybody watching this who's inboxes. I haven't had anywhere near as many on Instagram because I haven't got anywhere near as many followers on here. So that's been a massive positive. However, what me and you've just tried to do is, we haven't claimed to be in the know. We've just tried to you know, dissect the stuff that's been put out there, and try and make sense of it, and try and I wouldn't even say put a positive spin on. Just try to say, look, you want to be careful believing that. I'm not going to start slaughtering particular Twitter accounts, but there's 2 probably spring to mind, and most fans will at least look at them once a day or whatever, and all they do is regurgitate and compile headlines from notable journalists and unnotable journalists. So what you get is, you know, they copy and paste the headline from the story in a paper, let's just say the Daily Mail, for example, and they put the quote down, and then they put the name of the paper that it's from. But what I've noticed is over the last 6 weeks is that people are taking these fan pages, if you like, as gospel, and they're going, so not only am I getting an inbox from somebody asking what's the situation with this article by Craig Hope, but I'm then getting a question about, well, what about this Twitter account, because they're saying this, and it's, oh God, it's so frustrating. It's
we need exceptionally sensitive shit filters.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult it's easier for us because of the things we are privileged to have access to on occasion to understand where the solid information comes from, and what stuff you can kind of trust versus what something that just looks a pile of bollocks. And it's easier when you've had a bit of that experience. If I was to take a step away from it and say, look, I'm really lucky in that some of the stuff that I've done and been involved in, to have contacts that sometimes I can just fire a message to someone and say on WhatsApp and say, right, what do you make of this? And often it's a 1 or a 2 word answer. I don't get much, but it's enough to point us one way or the other as to whether it's useful or valid or even worth considering. I guess the other thing as well is being immersed in the region out here. I'm these days very acutely aware of where agenda can come from in a story, and you see it a million miles away. If you were to see some of the WhatsApp conversations myself and say somebody like Steve Hasty have had over the last 3 or 4 weeks, then Steve will fire a message going, hey, we called that. And I said, yeah, we did, because we could see what was coming. We could see the pattern building up. And that's kind of the one thing about I don't like ITK as a sort of a phrase to use because it's a pain in the arse, but it is a privilege. It's to sometimes be able to bounce something off somebody who has got credibility and say, does this make sense? Because sometimes it can initially read really well, but then actually once you dig at the surface a little bit, there's not a lot of substance to it.
No, I've seen a couple of people having a pop at the Daily Mail and the Chronicle, etc. But ultimately, in the pandemic, journalists are struggling to fill papers and sell papers for starters. So everything has to go online, which I think I've mentioned before. But a lot of journalists are fighting for their jobs because because of the pandemic, a lot of people are having to be laid off. So it's it is tough. It's tough being a journalist at Newcastle United as well. When after in the last 13 years, most of them have had at least one ban at some time under Ashley. And then on other occasions, just nothing from the club. So they've had to make things up. So it's almost become par for the course at Newcastle. If you don't get information, you still have to write your story because that's what you get paid to do. So Muck Murphy makes a point here. He says, nothing to report on. So what's the best thing to do? I know. The Newcastle Takeover is going round now. So let's write about that. Yeah. That's all it is. And that is very true. Clickbait is what we've said for, the last 6 weeks.
Somebody did a look at Richard Keys' Twitter account. Yeah. And if you look at the interactions he gets when he's just talking about anything versus the interactions he gets when he talks about Newcastle United, it's something like 100-fold more. It's 100-fold more.
That's why TalkSport do it. TalkSport have done it for years. Clickbait, and we're easy targets.
Absolutely.
We've got a bunch of passionate fans who, when there's something said about a player or their team or whatever, they act like piranhas and the bite, and that's the problem, and that's always been the problem. And those bites are making money for TalkSport, they're making money for Richard Keys and anybody else. Stan Collymore, another prime example of somebody who loves hoying one out. That other guy who was a footballer and then a boxer whose name I can never remember, but had a pop at me, and I've even bit.
I know who you mean. Woodhouse.
You know what I mean? Where Curtis
Woodhouse.
He's another one who, he's got absolutely nothing to do with Newcastle, but he still has a pop. And as you say, it causes interaction. Do you know what I mean? Colin Wilson's on. He says, hi, lads, this is better and proper refreshing crack than all the Twitter crap I'm looking at. Thanks, Colin. Toon says, positively positive last week. Think today was the day. Now I'm bored silly of it, which I can understand. Toon Fee's got a question for you. He says, can you only get Juventus stuff over there?
I actually nearly changed my T-shirt before I come on because I thought, Christ, I'm wearing Juventus again. So I figured somebody might spot that. It is actually easier to get. I'll tell you something about, and it's something that's actually relevant because as and when this comes through, football support out here is slightly different. Yeah. And fans support players. They don't support teams sometimes.
Yeah.
And so when Ronaldo went from Real Madrid to Juventus, suddenly there was an explosion of Juve stuff in the shops.
Yeah.
It's nuts. And that's the kind of thing we would see once everything's done and dusted. It wouldn't surprise me to see a marquee signing of some sort, because that will generate so many shirt sales in this region you wouldn't believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also why when I see links to players like Abdurazak, who plays at Al Nassr in Saudi, the Moroccan striker, I could see somebody like that coming in, because again, an Arab player in their shirt, they will sell shirts and they will sell them in volumes. And so yes, it is easy to get Juventus stuff here, particularly in one particular outlet type shop. Because this was much cheap. It was great. It was a good bargain, this one.
It's black and white. That's all that matters, Bonnie lad. John Bragg says, "Hey Steve, hope you're well. Are you sure about this takeover going ahead?" Yes, I still am, mate, 100%. And he says, "Why are you called the Geordie dentist?" It was an easy answer to that. He's a Geordie and he's a dentist.
That's exactly it. Absolutely, I am a Geordie and a dentist. It's funny though. I've had when sort of go back in time to sort of the early days of internet football forums and things like that. Sometimes people would refer to me just as the dentist, as if I was the only one. And to this day, I'm sure if somebody said I've got 2 tickets for the dentist, they'd probably end up in my hands, whether they were for me or not.
It's funny, isn't it?
I enjoyed.
Like John the Undertaker, of course, God bless him, who passed away. You know, he got the Undertaker, didn't he? Obviously, because of the way he dressed, etc. Exactly the same. It's funny how you get those kind of names. Just
sticks. I mean, but mine at least is in some sort of basis of fact based on my profession.
Dan Davis says, a lot of people are flapping even more now that I've left Twitter. You've definitely got more support than you know. Keep plodding on. You've been mint. Thank you, mate. So have you, mate, with your dinner question, and thanks for your support. Harry Best says, apparently works with overseas takeovers. That's what NUFC 360 had to say. That's about Paul Smith from Harry Best. Mark NUFC 84 says, even Super Kevin Phillips, the Mackham, said there's a lot of jealousy, and he's right.
I saw that.
Little old Newcastle United, loved, hated, but never ignored, which is very, very true.
It's mad how over time, you know, the same people who sit and tell you, oh, you're not a big club, or then filling their back pages with headlines about it.
Exactly.
And it's like, well, make a mind of what are we? If we're not a big club, why are we generating you some clicks and some hits and some sales in newspapers? And if we're not a big club, why don't you just ignore and let we go about our business?
Yeah, because it's become an annual. It's become, I mean, a biannual event. The transfer window, the transfer window for the last 2 years, for the last 12 years, you know, give or take 1 or 2 where we've spent some money, has been a farce. And you know, whether it's the name change of the ground, whether it was the payday lender over the front of our shirt, whether it was various protests against the owner, you know, all of these things generated publicity for the owner's company, but also generated clicks for newspapers and easy headlines for papers to write, easy headlines for television to report on, and for the last 12 years they've had nothing but negativity to report on, and that's why, do you know what I mean? And that's why this takeover it's probably upset a few of the press down south. And I always say this, people always say, well, you're a bit paranoid, Steve, and I know a lot of journalists who are down there, but it does feel as if it's mainly them who have a pop at us, you know, because they enjoy the negative stories because it gives them good copy, you know.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's all they'll be looking for is good copy. There are 1 or 2 who come and understand it and get it quite quickly. I think Henry Winter gets it very, very well, and he always speaks quite well about it. It always does, and always has when I've had a chance to interact with him personally. But I think, it's very frustrating that we're sort of pigeonholed in that kind of way. But we do generate good copy. We always do. We always have. You know, as somebody who's been central to organising protests and God, I've done all sorts in my time. And
Yeah.
you know, when I came out here, I was like, right, I'm done with all this shit. I'm not doing it anymore. And how wrong could I be? It's sort of it's sometimes, and you know personally what this will feel like. You sometimes have to put up with some bricks thrown at you from your own fans as well when you're doing stuff and you're trying to do the best thing for the club and the fan base. But you've got to stick to your principles and stand by doing it the right thing, you know, or what you believe the right thing is.
I actually went through my Twitter account over the last couple of weeks, and it was all part of the book, obviously, Every Boy's Dream, which Jamie Boyle's been writing, to try and find. And
anybody watching, it's a very good read. Steve's had his proofreading it, and it's bloody good. He's got it spot on, and in fact, he undersells himself. He undersells the importance of some of the stuff he's done.
Thanks,
really, honestly, mate, it's spot on. Really.
No, I appreciate that. Well, obviously, going through some of the stuff, it was amazing to see some of the Twitter arguments that you were involved in, I was involved in, and all for the all really. And I mean, the one thing I'll say about you and I is that we never let people get the better of us. We never argued with people. We always killed them with kindness. But at the same time, we were constantly fighting a battle from the moment that, Mike Ashley became the big, enemy. Me and you were we were involved with quite a lot of people. And it's what really sticks out when you read tweets like that is it's the way that Mike Ashley divided the fans, and like we were saying, and that became what I constantly was telling people. Unless the fan base unites and starts working together, and we were saying this when we set up NUFC Fans United with Zara, Steve Hasty, etc. Was unless the fans unite, Mike Ashley wins because he just divides and conquers, and it's so obvious when you start dissecting tweets. So many people who were working together then fell out, and it's just crazy, mate. That when you look back at the history of it,
it's very. I learned this. Go a little further back when we had NUSC transforming it into the trust, and we did these series of road shows where we went round the region, up to the Scottish borders, down to North Yorkshire, across the other side to Cumbria, all points in between. We were doing 2 or 3 a week, hard yards, fascinating. Going out and speaking to the fan base, fascinating. Hearing history repeating itself, speaking to lads I think it was in Forest Hall, who walked away from the club when Gordon Lee had sold Supermac, and they'd never been back. But Newcastle's still their club, and they still care. But that was their line in the sand, and they'd crossed it.
Yeah.
And you get generations where this happens. But what seems to have happened of late, and certainly in the last 10 years, and Mike Ashley's influence on this cannot be understated, is the ability to divide fans, to find ways to put divisions in so that what happens when people get angry will become amazing at turning the guns on ourselves.
Yeah.
And we'll fire bullets in any direction just because we're frustrated. And what you need to do is again, it's about reaching out. It was fascinating that when I'm going out to pubs and clubs around the region talking to fans, I learned very quickly, you'll never tell a Geordie what to do.
Yeah.
If you tell a Geordie what to do, you'll get 2 answers. One of them ends in off, and the other one is why. And the one if you listen to and engage with, even if their idea is the same as your idea, ultimately, they need to be engaged with to get it all together and to get everything sort of pulling in the same direction. And in social media, because of this ability to be semi-anonymous or totally anonymous, and to be able to say quite divisive and horrible and nasty things without any comeback, it wouldn't happen if they were in the pub stood next to you. They wouldn't have the balls to do it.
Yeah.
And they just wouldn't. And so, but they get away with it. And that makes that division more raw. And it comes across almost as quite nasty at times. and it's super frustrating. It's super frustrating, and there's a lot of healing needed, and I think that healing's got to come from the club reaching out. That's got to come from the new owners sitting down, getting people in place who can interact with the fan base, who can reach out. And it's now not just as a result of the new ownership. It won't just be a case of doing it locally. And not even internationally. It's a global thing. It's a big job, because part of that job then would be to grow the global fan base. When I did some work with BZG earlier this year, from their original takeover plan, they had estimated we've got a fan base globally of 4.2 million, and they wanted to grow that to 6.6 within 18 months, and they had certain strategies on how to do it. I actually think that's an underestimate. I think if you do it slightly differently, there's loads of ways to make that. You could double it in 18 months. I think particularly with the weight of Saudi behind it and the influence they have on the MENA region, I think it's very easy to more than double it in the 18 months. That's a big job, because part of what you've got then is you'll then get new divisions opening up by people who are paid off with Johnny-come-latelys.
Yeah.
And who are you?
Yeah.
And this is where, I've spent time with the Liverpool fans out here, because I used to drink with a load of them in Goodfellas Bar in Takeover. And their fan base gets in there, and they just accept everyone. Everyone's a fan. Nobody's a better fan or a worse fan or a different fan. They're just fans.
Yeah.
And whether you've been interested in the club for 5 minutes or interested in the club for 50 years, they don't care. And we've got to start not caring about things like that and just enjoying it and just enjoying the ride. That's what we've got to get back to.
Yeah, 100% well said.
Went on a bit of rant there, sorry.
Yeah, no, but that's what it's all about, mate. That's what it's all about. There's a few questions coming in, and obviously we're getting inundated, so sorry if I don't get to everybody. Kieran Byrne says, Rafa or Poch for you, Mitch, or would you keep Steve Bruce?
I think Steve Bruce deserves to see the season out.
Yeah.
That what would be my take on it.
Yeah. What
you do after that, I don't think he's the solution for the long term. Mm-hmm. It depends the way the owners want to go. With Rafa, you get a pre-presentated project. Somebody who doesn't need to learn the club, doesn't need to learn the fan base. He knows it all, he's seen it all, and he has these ideas which he was obviously wanting to present to Mike Ashley as his project.
Yeah.
Safe pair of hands, undoubtedly. Would that give a platform if there was a succession plan in place for who would then replace him? Easy analogy to make would be Liverpool boot room, probably a lazy analogy to make, but that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing I think you would get with Rafa. If you want excitement, I think Poch, personally. I look at what he did at Southampton.
Yeah.
He took Southampton and those players that ultimately all seemed to be eventually sold to Liverpool for a ridiculous amount of money. But that was because of him. That was because of the work he did. And you look at what he did with Spurs. Dragged them into a Champions League final. That's impressive. And it was exciting as well. And so for me, for all I love Rafa to bits, Poch is the one that excites me.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's fair enough. That's a good answer to the question. A lot of people laughing because you've been on ITV as well as being on here. Some people wondering how you can be in two places at the same time.
That was recorded about 2 days ago.
There you go. Yeah, lots of people just saying they're really enjoying it, which is nice. You know what I mean? And maybe over the next couple of weeks while we're still in lockdown, might try and make it a weekly affair, because there seems to be a big demand for me and you just talking rubbish about Newcastle, which is nice.
That's very flattering. Thank you, guys.
It is, yeah. There's your next question. Do you think the Premier League would have the balls to knock the Saudi royal family back, even if they found something?
The Premier League have just got to abide by the rules.
Yeah.
And if they believe somebody's broken the rules, they've got to apply the rules. That's what the rules are there for. But the rules need to be applied even-handedly, without external pressures, which have no relation to the Premier League tests, coming to bear on the outcome of that test. If the tests are failed on the basis of something that was never in the test in the first place, that's illegal. And that's not right. And so I don't think it's about having balls. The Premier League are proven very, very well in the last few weeks that they care about money a lot. And will they knock back money? Will they knock back an injection of cash into the British game in such a way? And I genuinely don't think, I think they'd be mental if they did that. So yeah, I don't think it's about having balls. I mean, the statement I was given mine with the first, again, same source as I mentioned earlier, that he was led to believe the new Premier League chief executive was bricking himself about sorting it out because he knew what was going to come with the ticket, and he knew the external pressures that were likely to bear. But they don't bear any relation to the tests. They just don't. So they shouldn't apply. They shouldn't have any influence on it at all. And the other big thing, we can't understate the impact of Project Restart and all the legal ramifications about what's going on at the moment. Because bearing in mind that legal department at the Premier League is probably only about 4 people.
Yeah.
You know, they must have an inbox that makes mine seem quite genteel. You know, at the minute, and these are big decisions about, do you start the league? How do you restart the league? And if you're going to null and void it, how do you work it out? And what they're looking for ultimately is the solution that involves the least amount of lawyers at the end of the day, because somebody's going to complain. League 2 have come to a solution today, but League 1 are kicking off about it. So then you look across the 4 competitions, the Premier League and then the 3 EFL leagues.
Yeah.
Are we going to have each league resolved in a different way?
What do you make
Possible.
What did you make about that today then, with League 2 now confirming that they're going to have promotion? They're going to have the playoff, but they're not going to have any relegation. I mean, it's got to be passed first by the FA, but that's what they've all come to the conclusion of.
I guess you have to look at it that if all the teams in that division are happy with the outcome, then who's to say? You know, they're the teams who are going to be affected most by a null and void, however. So that, you know, they're the teams who are going to be affected by a loss of gate income significantly, not just a little bit, massively for those guys. Not getting the income is going to be quite, you know, difficult. But what baffles me is the potential of having League 2 settled on one way, League 1 settled on another way, the Championship settled in another way, and the Premiership being settled in another way.
Yeah, there's got to be some kind of uniformed way of doing it. Surely they got.
Where's the consistency? But it shows how vastly underprepared the football authorities are for this entire scenario. It doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
You know, it's going to be messy. Even once it's all done, it's going to end up with lawyers and somebody who's been relegated will sue the league, or somebody who's been denied a promotion will sue somebody somewhere, be it teams who haven't been relegated or the league or someone. You know, I've heard all sorts of amazing things. There was a suggestion that the nuclear option the Championships clubs had was that they all went into administration together and all start next season on -10 points.
Jesus.
And apparently that's been discussed. Apparently that's been discussed by some of the chairmen. Is what they call their nuclear option.
That's crazy.
And it doesn't make any. But to say League 1, League 2 say, yep, we're happy with that as a solution, and League 1 not.
Yeah.
Already I see lawyers sitting in the offices thinking, yeah, there's opportunities there.
Yeah. Tommy the Tank says, what's your opinions on the rumours that Italian and Spanish teams are wanting PIF to look at a takeover if the Newcastle deal fell through? Would it pressurise the Premier League to speed things up? Well, I don't think it would. And I don't think PIF are interested at all in anything in the Italian or Spanish leagues.
I think if it was 10 years ago, there would be, but it's not. The situation is the premier game at the moment is the Premier League. That's where they'll want to be. They don't want to be messing around in anything they see other than the very best. And they're probably looking at Man City, to be fair. They're probably looking at Abu Dhabi and what they've achieved there and thinking, well, hang on, if little brother can do that, what can we do?
Yeah.
And so, that's the only table we'll want to see that. I can't see them wanting to be in Italy in particular. Spain, yeah. But then if it's not in the Arab world, if it's not Real Madrid or Barcelona, they're not interested.
No, I think it's a load of rubbish. It's just another clickbait story for me. Colin Wilson, I've just got to get your question. What is your take on voiding the season? I don't agree with voiding the season whatsoever. I do feel that it should be played to its conclusion. And I just look for two factors. A, Liverpool, just talking Premier League, Liverpool are 25 points clear at the top and deserve to win that league. And B, you know, there's a chance that Newcastle could, you know, get to Wembley still. You know, we're in a quarter-final of a cup, and I'm ever the optimist, but, you know, under strange circumstances, it would be so ironic for Newcastle to get to the cup final and none of us be able to go and see it. And, you know, Newcastle end up winning the cup. But, you know, it's got to be finished for me, and I think, you know, I think it will be. What about you, Mitch?
I think they've got to give it every opportunity to finish. I have major concerns over player safety at the moment. When I hear nonsense like, when you're tackled, turn away. That's like telling a guard dog not to bite a man covered in steak. You can't stipulate what's going to happen in the heat of something, or even on the training ground. I'm bothered purely with my medical head on. Actually, when I see the amount of players reporting back in Europe, and then suddenly that club's got 10 positive tests, and that's my biggest concern. The other concern I've got, and again, it comes back to how do you finish this season properly?
Yeah.
Is if they do it this neutral grounds, we're going to play three games each a week. You're allowed 5 subs, not 3. My concern is that in that mix, somebody won't respond well to that. There'll be a team who just can't hack that.
Well, Danny Rose,
for one reason or another,
the most outspoken person I've ever heard on this. He's coming out with a load of expletives, saying it's an absolute effing disgrace and this, that, and the other, and he's not happy at all.
No, and therefore that's just one who's, to be fair to him, brave enough to be honest and brave enough to say, this is what I stand for and I'm not happy about it. Imagine if you've got a squad full of that. And if you're, I don't know, who's in and around us that should be safe but mightn't be, you know?
Yeah.
Somebody in and around our league position. They then go into that scenario that,
Brighton didn't want this to happen. They didn't want the season to continue.
Aye. You know, if you take a, hang on, everything's gone a little bit meh.
All right,
okay. Telecoms again. Wait, there you go. Everybody's back in the room. Right. Yeah, no, if you take a team like that, if they've got a squad full of Danny Roses thinking that way, they might not win another game all season. Then they end up getting relegated from a position that they shouldn't have been, and under normal circumstances wouldn't have been. And my first instinct with that is, lawyer, yeah, we'll go, here's another legal case. Yeah. We have finished the season different to the way it started, and I'm not happy about that. It's so difficult. There's no perfect solution. There's got to be a compromise somewhere. I would like to see it given the opportunity to finish in some sort of way that is valid to give validity to everything, and I would like to see it wrapped up like that, and then make that the priority, and then work out how we're going to fit next season in after that. It would be nice to get it finished though.
Tom Dixon, what was his question there? He says, do you think the FA Cup will go ahead? Yes, mate, I do. They've already come out and said that it is a priority if the Premier League games get played. There's a question on the screen there for you, Mitch. Do you think MBS will attend any games?
I'd be amazed if he didn't. He's not going to be there every week. But if, for example, we can guarantee if we got to a cup, semi-cup final, probably be there. But he would want to come in if Saudi Arabia are investing heavily in Newcastle United for whatever reason and to be used as whatever vehicle they want, I'm quite sure he will come at some stage.
Yeah. There's the next question. Do you think having the Rubens on board will help develop St James's Park and the surrounding areas?
Well, can't hurt.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the developers would invest in the region and have property and land in the region for investment and development. So that's kind of the reason debt, if you will. So yeah, it's got to be an advantage. I tell you, the other advantage is connections. Connections to council, connections to business, that club city community synergy thing. Those connections are really important, because if, for example, we want to find a solution to Lees's Terrace and the East Stand, they're the kind of connections you need to work.
Yeah.
You need to know how to work on the council. Right, we've got this problem. You've got this problem. It's our problem together. How do we find a solution to it, and can we work together on it? And they're the kind of people you need on board with those connections to do stuff like that.
Do you think they'll have already had communication with a high street group who bought Strawberry Place? Do you think that's something that potentially might have happened? Because obviously that's the most obvious stand to build on. And at this moment in time, because Ashley sold the land to the high street group and they've announced their development plans today, do you think that there could still be a deal done?
There's always deals available somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need that land to develop the gallery.
Mm-hmm.
The question mark on development of the Gallagher has always been how much it costs to get another 5,000 to 8,000 seats, and it's never been financially viable.
Yeah.
Whether somebody with a back in Saudi Arabia would care about it being financially viable, that's a different matter. You don't actually need that land, though, to do something with that. It does limit other development opportunities with the ground. Because you've got to remember, modern football grounds, if you go to see Spurs' new ground, but if you go to the States, you go to somewhere like Dallas's new ground, they're all 24/7, 365 venues now. There's always something going on there. And there's a mall attached, and there's F&B attached. There are places to go to. We're in the town centre. It never fails to amaze me that Newcastle United have never been able to get a bar sorted that people would flock to through the week, 24/7. We'll go to Strawberry instead over the road.
Yeah.
The club should be able to knock anything into a cocked hat. Set up a bar that which you can see the pitch from when you're having a pint. People will go and do that. I would go and do that. You know, but that's what losing that land takes away. It takes away the opportunity to make further development. Yeah. The other tie with that development is I've heard somewhere an interesting little snippet from someone that part of the deal with Mike Ashley for selling the land was that for every story over 9 stories one of the buildings goes to, he gets an extra payment.
Yeah.
Which is all a bit odd. So that might be something that would block getting your hands on it. Is suddenly you're back over the negotiation table with somebody who's got a connection with Mr. Ashley again, which is a pain. But yeah, I mean, there's always an opportunity in business to make a deal.
Yeah, Kirk says you can also develop the East Stand. It's a myth that we can't develop the ground. Yeah, that's true. You know, there was plans put in place when I was fans liaison officer at the club. David Stonehouse showed me the plans to incorporate the listed buildings within the stadium. You know, it's basically just the front of those, you know, university buildings, which would have to incorporate into the stand. But you are quite right. You know, that could be the case. And obviously it's something which the Rubens, as you say, that was the original question. It's something that the Rubens could probably help with, you know, moving forward, you know, once we get to that stage. Mutt Murphy says, how much is a crate of cans over there, Mitch? Important question.
Depends where you go. See, I'm currently not in Dubai. I'm in Ras Al Khaimah, which is about an hour and a half north of Dubai, which is where my family lives. So I spend my time bouncing between Dubai and Ras Al Khaimah. When I'm at work, I've got a place I crash in Dubai. When I'm not at work, I come home to Iraq. And it's much cheaper in Ras Al Khaimah. There's a local brew shop here. You can get a crate of cans for 80 dirhams, which is what I don't know anymore. Maybe it's about 17 quid.
Yeah.
But I can take you to a bar on the Palm where they'll charge you 60 dirhams for a pint, which is 15 quid. Quite easily. I've had my eyes taken out there on more than one occasion, unfortunately. So yeah, it depends where you go. You can pay a ridiculous amount for it, but yeah, it's frustrating.
John Ball, another important question. A lot of people asking it. Should 9 ball be reverted back to Shiraz?
Why shouldn't it be? That was all done in spite, and that's something that we need to remove from the club altogether. Anything that was done in spite, anything that was done to put a knife in the back, that needs to be undone. The goodwill as a new owner that you would make on the back or something like that, it's little things, but they make a massive difference.
Yeah. Next question. Which non-NUFC player, past or present, would you have loved to have seen in the shirt?
There's a good question. Oh, who did we nearly sign and he didn't? He ended up going to Liverpool. Did he big daft finish centre back?
Oh, right.
Because if that
Sammy Hippier. Was it
Hippier? I think
Hippier,
yeah. I think if Keegan had signed him, would have won the title.
Good shout. It's a good shout. I've got to be honest, because I just like seeing goals being scored. I'd love to have seen Wayne Rooney in a Newcastle shirt. It was never ever going to happen. It was all part of a plan to boost to get it over the line for Man United. Somebody had to bid first, and we were never at the races for that. But I'd like to have seen Wayne Rooney. Like, Jay Chater says, what legends would you bring back to the club under the new ownership? I've heard a lot of people talking about director of football role. I think that'll go to somebody else. I don't think it'll go to an ex-player, but I'd love to see a lot of them come as ambassadors.
There's got to be a way to do it. There's got to be a way. Something Steve Hasty and I worked on with BZG at the start of this year, when we were talking to them about future options, was basing it basically something similar that they've done at Man City, where if you're an ex-player, and it doesn't matter whether you played one game off the bench or whether you've played 200 games, you're welcome. And you're welcome, and you can be welcomed back as an ambassador. You come and sit on a table with some of our guests in one of the suites. Just be part of the club, because once you've been part of the club, you're always part of the club. And that's something we need to exploit. We've got some great ex-players who are great personalities, some of whom have done amazing things. Look at my old mucker from Burnside, Tony Roma, who's fought cancer 4 times. Yeah, he's an inspirational guy. You should have him kicking around having a chat with anybody you can to find him as the inspiration in fight and comeback and things like that.
I wouldn't just do it for the corporates either. I went to the club a few years ago, about a project which I thought would be great within the ground, and you can do it pre-match and you can do it after match, which sounds a bit weird, but pre-match before the game would get people in spending at the bars, and putting a talk in the concourses in the stands would really work. So get an ex-player in on a raised stage in the concourse and doing a pre-match talk. You do that in all the stands on all the levels. It's bringing trade into the club. But after the game as well, there's an ideal opportunity, because if there's 2 weeks between a game, then that beer that they've got there is just going to go to waste. So rather than just chucking that beer out and chucking that food out that doesn't sell, it would make more sense to, keep the bars open for an hour after the match and let people chill out and do it at a reduced rate. Maybe slightly cheaper pints, because first thing people do when win, lose, or draw is go out into the town and go to the bars. Do you know what I mean? So people would probably hang back and have a pint. Not everybody would, but you get a lot of people who would do.
Give you an example of a lost opportunity under Ashley. When Ashley took over, there was about, I think, your dad would probably tell you better, but it was maybe about 10 of us had season tickets, maybe more, had season tickets together, all in Barrington 92. And we used to rock up for Barrington 92 opening at about 1. would have something to eat, would have a bet, would have a few pints, would watch the match, and then if there was a televised match on after the game, would sit and buy in 92 and watch the match, and maybe even had something else to eat, and certainly have another couple of pints. Once Ashley changed the quality of the food in there, put the price of the beer up, people started to lose interest. That whittled down and whittled down and whittled down to the point where now there's 2 tickets, not out of the 10, 11, 12, and nobody hangs around beforehand, nobody hangs around afterwards. Everybody goes to the bodega for a pint and goes back to the bodega afterwards. It's tragic, really. And these are the missed opportunities in terms of commercial income, that something like what you're suggesting would be a massive boost, because you're right. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe even be 3 weeks before you see another game. And where's the revenue? If we're not a 24/7, 365 venue like we should be, then we need to maximise what we do get on game day.
100%.
You know, Arsenal are doing something like £1 million per game on a game day. I bet we get nowhere near that. If we get a quarter of that, we'll be lucky.
It needs to be more welcoming, and Tottenham's new ground is obviously it's purpose built and it's fantastic. It's a proper match day experience for people. So, you know, I'm sure that the new owners will get things right. We've got to ask this question. People are, we literally only got 8 minutes left, mate. It's flown over. Lots of people saying it's good crack, which is very nice. Fox's question there is for you, because you were involved in this. Can you tell us something that BZG had planned from the plans that you saw now that they're not in the room? Is it,
Yeah.
BZG was something BZG was something which I criticised and didn't believe in, but you were involved in it, and it was a genuine attempt.
I learned even more after I got back in the room properly with Midhat and sat and looked at a few things. I tell you, the thing that really, really excited me was I had an idea about, tied in with growing the global image, was to do academies and to do to get academies across Asia.
Yeah.
And they bought a plot of land with a Chinese construction partner over the road from Disneyland Shanghai, and that would have been a training ground and an academy. So everybody going to Disneyland Shanghai would have seen the name Newcastle United just over the road, and that would have been the centre of operations for academies in China. All the academies in China would feed into that, and that would also then go to Southeast Asia. And it was all part of the strategy to not just link growing the fan base, but also harvesting talent from Southeast Asia, because it's there, but it's not very well exposed. And that just blew my mind. I'm looking at this plan, I'm like, hang on, is that Disneyland? It's like, yeah, it's over the road from Disneyland. Right. and so they had loads of lovely little ideas like that were kind of like, oh, you really thought outside of the box. And they did everything in such a naive and haphazard way. And I wish I'd reached out harder to them earlier when I'd first had a chance of an introduction, because maybe I could have steered it in a slightly different path, but maybe not. And then once Sheikh Khaled had been personally offended and upset, it was always a very difficult thing to get them back in the room. Very difficult. Yeah.
Pity. Rope Access Management says new transfers allowed to play from the 1st of July. Do you think they would allow this to make the last games more exciting? I'm not sure about the details about the transfer window, because obviously everything's completely, skew with. I don't know what the crack is. Is the transfer window going to be opening at the usual time or
not? Good question. I know I've seen some proviso for players whose contracts expired on the 30th of June, that they'd be force majeured into staying to play with the team that they were with until the season officially ended.
That's what I would
and I guess there'd have to be some sort of balancing to take that into account for transfer windows and new players. Again, we've only touched on about 3 topics about restart, and you can see how complex they are. Yeah. And anybody saying, well, why aren't the Premier League doing our paperwork? Well, because they've got all of this paperwork to do as well. Yeah. And it's a mess.
It is. Yeah. 100%. It's ongoing as well, and like we've already discussed about Leagues 2 and 1 and whatever. It's nothing's getting sorted.
No.
There's lots of talking going on, lots of gesturing, and lots of votes going on, but we're not getting anywhere.
No, it's circular because clubs can't agree. This is where you see the measure of the clubs, that they can't work together. There's always individual interest comes into play, and eventually one will crack, and it only takes one to crack, then another one will, and then another one will, and then that's it. That solidarity's gone. And I mean, I've seen the stuff that the Norwich lot have come out with about taking into account FA Cup as well, and that seems to have upset the Leeds fans who may miss out on a promotion to it. And I've seen some of the Leeds lads that I follow out here having a real snipe at Norwich because it just seems cockamamie, the concept that you might combine League and Cup. Things to could take into account whether you get relegated or not. It's just nuts. But that just shows how the levels of ways that people are thinking and the haphazard ways that people are thinking, because we've never had to deal with anything like this before.
No. A couple of last minute comments, and Wayne Gilmore says, I'd love the takeover to be announced whilst you two are live. So we could all go maybe on the cans. Muck Murphy says, great chat, lads. See you on Twitter, Mitch, for the meltdown. Steve, get yourself back on in due course. I will do. I'll be back on Monday. Ronnie Lillico, thanks. He says, this is a golden opportunity for Newcastle United after COVID, as a lot of clubs will need cash. Newcastle United have to take advantage, especially with the academy. A lot of people just saying thank you. A couple of questions, a couple of people with the same question as well. Tom Dixon asks, do we think Matty Longstaff will sign a new contract? Yes or no? Yes, I do.
Yeah, I do as well.
Yeah.
I keep asking. I know his uncle quite well, and I keep hassling Darren, his uncle, to give us some heads up. And bless him, typical lawyer. He's very, very tight-lipped and very very protective of his nephew. But yeah, I expect him to.
Yeah. I tell you what we'll do. A lot of people saying we will come on when the takeover goes through. If you're up for it, let's just confirm that we'll do.
Oh, hell aye.
Let's confirm that. But let's do next Friday, Mitch. Anyway, if you're up for it, we'll just do Friday next week. And we'll just book that in. Unless the takeover goes through before then, me and Mitch will be back next Friday, same time, same place, 6 o'clock. And what I'll do is I will be back on Twitter on Monday, guys. I'm going to have the weekend off it. Made a few adjustments, so I'm not getting any inboxes, I'm afraid. I just kind of be chewed with inboxes as well as everything else. But I will be back on Twitter on Monday. But Mitch, have a great weekend, mate, and look forward to keeping.
You too, pal.
I'm sure we'll be in touch over the course of the next 7 days. And thanks for reading my book as well.
Aye. No, pleasure. It's a good read as well. Everybody get it. And I'm not saying this because I'm sitting chatting with my mate. It's a really good read.
Cheers, mate. Take care. Speak to you soon.
You too, pal.
Bye, mate. Bye. Great to have Mitch on. People asking about the book. Yes, you can get the book. It'll be released on Kindle at the end of May. And then Amazon, because of the the COVID pandemic, we're going to probably put it out, once we get back to what we would call normal. So if you go to Warcry Press Publishing, you'll be able to pre-order a copy on there. Okay, guys, I'm back at 3 o'clock tomorrow for a chat with Lee Clark. Take care. Speak to you soon. Good night. God bless. I wish you well.